greetings from the apocalypse. So today is day 2. We're going to be working on chasing and repousse. So I'm going to show you how to lay out your shapes on some sheet and get it cut out and, basically get your base material ready to go. Another big advantage of doing chasing and repousse techniques is that you can actually do it on relatively thin metal. You can get a lot of great texture, and because you're, hammering it and forcing those steel tools against it, the metal tends to end up really springy and tough. So for example, for these earrings, I usually do 30 gauge. I mean, you could go 26 gauge, a little heavier if you want, but I find surprisingly that after all the beating that it gets, basically, it's surprisingly springy, but because it's thin, it's nice and light, so it's easy to wear and also, saves you a little bit on materials. So I'm gonna go with 30 gauge. So what I have here is a sheet of 30 gauge sterling. You can actually also use 30 gauge fine silver. Again, the beading tends to really make it pretty springy, so that even when you're kneeling it or whatever, it's a lot tougher. So I find that unless you take this and do something truly dreadful to it, it actually holds up great. So it's a great way to use not a huge amount of materials and get a really beautiful look with pretty simple tools. So like I was describing before, I can't draw for shit. If you can draw, great. Fabulous. You can draw any kind of really shape you want. What I have here is basically just a bunch of varieties of a pretty leaf shape, or at least what I think is a pretty leaf shape. What you think is a pretty leaf shape, maybe something else, so feel free, draw it, go nuts. But what we've prepped up here is a sheet with some leaf shapes in different sizes and 2 of each, so that we can use that to lay out on our metal and cut it out. Now with something like 30 gauge, I don't have to saw it. I can just use a pair of shears and cut through it. Unless you have really a lot of convex curves, that you can't really get in with your scissors, in that case you can saw. But another advantage of this is just you cut it out with your scissors real quick, which is a plus. So what I have done, I picked a couple shapes that I liked, and I cut it out, not exactly to the line. I left a little extra paper sticking out beyond, because I find if I take this, I stick it on my sheet, and then I cut on the line through both the paper and the metal with my shears, I get a much more accurate line and accurate cut than if I put it down on there and try to cut around it exactly. I don't know, maybe you can do that and it works super great, I don't know, but I find that this works better, so that's what I do. So you can see I've taken one of mine and I've used Elmer's. Now, rubber cement works really great for stuff like this, but what I don't like about rubber cement is the fact that it will basically give you brain damage if you sniff much of it. So I'm I drink plenty of tequila already. I've already got my brain damage all locked up. I don't need that. So usually I use plain old Elmer's, because it's non-toxic, as I'm sure most of you remember. People ate it in school and yet they lived. So I put a drop or 2 on here and smear it around with my finger and put this on here and just let it dry for a couple minutes, because that way, I did this last night, but it's held on there really nicely, and now I'm going to be able to just cut it out without any major problem. Normally what you can also do, you want to try within reason to kind of maximize your sheet. So let's say you were going to do, a few different a few different shapes and sizes. You could cut them out and then kind of lay them out on here like little, jigsaw style, if you know what I mean, to try to take advantage of your sheet. Just make sure you're leaving enough room for you to get in there and cut, because sometimes you can try to be so thrifty and so smart that you outsmart yourself, and then you don't have enough room to work. So that's happened to me many times. So now I know how to kind of leave myself a little space, but not too much. So hopefully you all remember that the whole thing about cutting is that when you're gonna go to cut, you're gonna get yourself face, so I won't look right at you, sorry about that. You're gonna set yourself up facing forward, so that with your feet on the floor and your shoulders nice and squared, so that you can align yourself and keep yourself sort of oriented, and you get a much nicer, straighter cut. Now, don't get me wrong, if you cut this out and it's not perfect, life will go on, you'll file it a little bit. But my goal is always to try to cut down on the number of steps it takes to get to the end of something, right? So the more careful I am in the beginning steps usually means less steps later to aggravate the shit out of me. So I try to keep my aggravation at a dull roar. So that's my goal. Whee! Yippee! So I'm gonna grab this and I'm going to the best of my ability, cut right on the line. And hopefully my glue is holding this nice enough that it won't slide around. You know, and you could also tape it. You know, you could use like a little Scotch tape or something like that. I mean, there's kind of a million methods for sticking something. There's a million methods for putting a piece of paper on a piece of metal. So like, you know, glue, tape, whatever floats your boat, or whatever you have at home. Which, I'm not gonna lie to you, sometimes you make decisions based on what you have at hand. So you see, once I have it cut out, here's my metal. Still has my little paper thing on there, a little bit of glue. So normally what I do is I just pop it in a bowl of water, like so, leave it for a couple minutes. The glue just dissolves, the water will, you know, will clean everything off of there basically. You could also use a little bit of, I don't know, you could use an alcohol wipe, you could take it to the sink and run it under hot water, whatever. Usually I just have my water bowl there anyway, so I kind of just throw it in there and do something else, and then after a couple minutes I pull it out. Another little piece of advice I might give you if you're gonna do something like this, as long as you have enough materials, if you're gonna do a technique like this, like some earrings or whatever, make a couple pairs at once, because you can vary things and do all kinds of fun stuff. And I almost feel like if you're gonna do a technique and you have the tools out and you're doing the process, it takes almost the same amount of time to do like 2 pairs of earrings as it does to do one. So you may as well make one for you and one to sell, or one for you and one for a friend while you're at it. So Alexis just came over to me with an issue because she's going to make some of these chased and repousse earrings as well. But she wants to file them so that they're exactly the same, right? Which getting things to match will make you crazy. So a really easy method for that is we'll just take a piece of double stick tape and put it between them and squish them together. And that way you can file and they'll be exactly the same. Honestly, you could do that right from the start, where you could take 2 pieces of metal, stick them together, and then saw or cut them out, and you know that they both be exactly the same. But we didn't do that, so we're gonna stick them together and then file them. So just to show you, I put a piece of double stick tape on here and stuck it on. I'm gonna peel off that top layer that's sticky and put the other one on top. And then we'll have a little metal sandwich. You see, just like that. And that way you can hold it and you can file it, and you're getting the exact same profile on both at once, which will save a little time and aggravation, because getting 2 separate things to be identical is usually pretty much enough to drive you to drink.